Okay, so we have quite a few questions here today. I wasn't expecting this much. I thought you guys were going to go easy on the new guy. But anyhow, I should probably put a disclaimer. Don't expect Venerable Guan-like answers. But I'll certainly do my best. And if I don't answer some of these questions well, I will look into it, and I won't give up until I get a good answer. Thank you so much for today's wonderful Dharma talk. You made something so deep, very simple and practical for us to understand. Much appreciated. Okay, well, much appreciated as well. Okay, so the next question is, Venerable, does it matter the order of forgiveness, yourself and others, to conquer suffering? Well, I would say that it's very difficult to forgive the other person who has caused you harm if you don't first do something to relieve the suffering that you feel. So if you don't try to ameliorate your suffering, then you'll always be stuck on the idea that that person hurt you and that you're suffering now. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to forgive yourself. And that comes with accepting your suffering. You have to come to terms with that suffering before you can forgive the other person for doing that to you. And as I said earlier, if you want to forgive yourself, then you have to embrace and care for your sufferings. You have to understand that it's perfectly fine to suffer. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a natural process. When you can start to do that, your suffering will naturally subside. And when it subsides, then you don't feel that hatred or animosity towards the person who did that harm to you. Because you see everything as just being coming together of certain causes and conditions. Does it matter the order of forgiveness? It probably is a lot easier if you forgive yourself first, and that will naturally lead for you to forgive other people. Believing that the truest wisdom and answers are within, why does the world encourage us to seek externally? In our society, everything that we do, we have to understand that what we are, we're essentially organisms in an environment. Organisms that react to stimulus from external objects in the outside world. And so if we react to external objects, then that's when we start creating stress in ourselves. And so if you want to better deal with what's out there externally, all the external objects in your environment, you first need to focus on what kind of reaction you're having towards those circumstances, towards those objects. And so it first starts with looking within. You look within and you deal with the problems within so that you can deal better with what's out there in the world. If you're conscious of what's going on in your mind, then naturally you'll be conscious of what's going on in the outside world, because it's your mind that perceives everything. Wisdom can only be found within. What happens when we look for answers outside of us? Well, we're looking in the wrong place, because everything begins with how you perceive. And it's an activity of the mind. So if you want to understand everything that's out there externally, you have to first understand yourself. When our suffering is due to what others do and say, do we confront our suffering? Do we confront the other person, or do we work with ourselves? Well, when other people say something that you don't like, that you feel hurt about, actually there's nothing wrong with what that person has said, but it's just you have attached to the words of criticism. So the problem doesn't lie with the person. The problem lies with yourself, with your reaction. And so, do you confront the person? No, because when you confront the person, you're not using rationality, you're not using wisdom to confront that person. You're using your emotion. And so you have to first confront yourself. You have to build the awareness that you're clinging on to those words of criticism, and that's what's making you unhappy. When you have built that awareness, then you realize that those words carry no weight, but it's you who've added meaning to those words. You need to first confront yourself, and when you can confront yourself and come to terms with that suffering, and you're able to overcome it, then naturally you'll confront the other person with understanding and wisdom. To end suffering is to stop wanting things other than the way they truly are. Does it make it less desired for improvements to become better? I think we have to understand that if you admit that you're suffering and you want things other than the way they are, that's coming to terms with what you're experiencing. And that doesn't say anything about desiring for improvements. I think we should separate those into two separate topics. The fact that you're able to accept your current condition will give you better understanding of what you're capable of doing. And that will create the foundation for you to make more improvements in your life. I think we have to understand the difference between being passive and being accepting and understanding. Being passive doesn't mean that you necessarily accept what you're experiencing. Some people can be very indifferent to things, to be very apathetic about things, but that's simply because they don't care about it. They don't want to do anything about it. They don't want to do anything to make their condition better. But actually, when you're accepting your suffering, you're actually doing something that takes a lot of courage. You're confronting your suffering. If you're passive and apathetic, you don't confront anything. You just bury your head in the sand. But when you start confronting your suffering, that is an active effort to reduce the suffering that you feel. And so, in fact, you are making a desire to improve yourself. By accepting your suffering, you are desiring to improve yourself. And thereby, you will be able to, at some point, overcome those sufferings because you have made that noble desire. This is the first time here, upon listening to the teaching on suffering, it seems to me that there is little difference between letting go and being complacent. Should we not desire in life? If not, what is the goal and purpose? Okay, well, I briefly talked about that in my last question. The thing about desire is that you need to have desire to do something. If you don't have the desire, then nothing can be accomplished. If I don't have the desire to want to practice Buddhism, to want to reduce the suffering that I feel, to want to achieve enlightenment, then I will never achieve enlightenment. So you need that desire. But the important thing is you don't cling to that desire. You don't attach to it. There's a story about someone who went to the supermarket to buy some coconuts. They bought the coconuts, they came out, and someone asked them what they had just purchased. And that person told them, I just purchased some coconuts for myself. And then that person asked, you purchased the coconuts. The coconut has a coconut shell. Are you going to eat the coconut shell as well? The person replied, well, obviously not. I won't be eating the coconut shell. And then the person then asked, well, I don't believe you. I don't believe that you're not eating the coconut shell. And basically what this story is trying to say is that when we desire for something like eating coconuts, we desire the coconut water. We don't need the shell. But when we purchase the coconut, it comes with the shell. And once we drink the coconut water, then we can dispense away with the coconut shell. And it's just the same for your Dharma practice. You need to have a desire to drink that coconut water. But once the coconut water is finished, then you dispense away with it. You throw the coconut shell away. So you don't attach to it. So there's little difference between letting go and being complacent. Letting go, like I said earlier, takes courage. Being complacent is just being passive. You need to have desire in your life, because if you don't have a desire, you'll never make improvements. But you can't attach to that desire. Because as soon as you attach to that desire, then you give rise to three mental poisons: desire, hatred, and ignorance. Thank you for your talk on suffering. I am about to start a career in counseling. Do you have any advice on how to remain happy amidst so much suffering so that I can better help my patients? Regardless of what happens during your day-to-day experiences, happiness first starts with not wanting things to be different. And so in order to come to terms with what you're experiencing, I think you have to start building awareness of yourself. You need to practice mindfulness. When you have developed mindfulness, then you can use that mindfulness to better understand yourself and overcome some of your sufferings. To accept everything as it is, wouldn't it be conformism? For example, I am in sales, so I always have to look for more. So you're in sales, so it's your job to try to make as many successful sales as possible, to make as much money as possible. So you're saying that if I practice self-acceptance, self-compassion, all I'm doing is just accepting things the way they are, so how can I make improvements? Like I said earlier, you have to first accept the circumstances of your condition before you can do anything to improve on it. If you want to do a better job at work, if you want to make more sales, then you need to first understand the situation, how the operation is run, what things I can do to get more sales. That takes an understanding of your strengths and weaknesses. You have to first accept what those weaknesses are, and you build on them. We don't let emotions take the best out of us and affect our ability to transform that into sales. So we need to first relieve some of the negative emotions that we feel during the workplace to be able to better deal with the different things that come our way during the course of our work. So by accepting your current condition, you're not really, I would say, in the way that this is written, conforming with your condition, because you accept it so that you can make it better. Can you please explain in more practical details self-compassion, how to apply it? When I'm thinking of it, what comes on my mind is that I'll feel pity for myself and start crying. Well, I think we should differentiate between self-pity and self-compassion. Self-pity is just feeling miserable for yourself and wallowing in the depths of despair, not wanting to do anything to improve your condition. Self-compassion is recognizing that you are suffering right now, but that this suffering is also very temporary. And when it goes away, you will be better. So you should be showing care and love for yourself. It's something that comes out of an active effort to want to increase your well-being. Whereas self-pity is something that comes out of despair. When you're pitying yourself, you're not at peace with who you are. When you have self-compassion for yourself, you are completely at peace. You can accept yourself for who you are, and you are willing to be with that suffering until it leaves, and you're not going to fight it. Well, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times the circumstances that we experience in our life, we can't control them. We can only change how we look at them. If you don't start accepting things as they are, then that will cause you a lot of suffering and disturbance in your life. The only thing that you can do to make your life better is to change the way you look at things. I've answered quite a few questions. I'm not sure if I answered all of them to your liking, but certainly I think there's a lot of things that I can touch upon again in a future lecture. Maybe some of the questions here will serve as a good topic for another lecture that I give. Regardless of whether or not I answered some of these questions to your liking, really the whole point of me coming up today to answer some of these questions is to show that regardless of whether or not I answer some of these questions well or not, I will give myself self-compassion. So it's not really a question. It's not really a question of how well I answer them, or whether or not it's something that you find acceptable, because we all will have successes and failures in our life. We all make mistakes, and the key to finding happiness is to start coming to terms and making peace with those mistakes, to embrace it. And so the important thing was not to answer those questions well. The important thing was just to come up here and answer those questions.